Hey guys, it's Cece and welcome to HP Chats. So HP Chats is a video series that I do every other month or so where I have a video dedicated to discussing some element of Harry Potter. I have done a variety of discussions thus far, both positive and negative, because even though Harry Potter is my favorite series of all time, I tend to be also pretty critical of it. So if you were interested in my previous HP Chats video, then go check out the playlist. You can watch a few of my other discussions, but today is going to be a positive discussion. Because today we are going to talk about Neville Longbottom. Just look at him. Busy being amazing. So Neville Longbottom, as I've said in many a video, is my favorite Harry Potter character, and I thought that I would spend today discussing exactly why that is. And instead of holding him up for this entire video, I'm going to give him a little Hogwarts-themed platform. Hold on. There you go. You can see him. He's sitting up on the Hogwarts coffee thing. He's still in frame. Neville! I'm going to try to go in semi-chronological order for how I fell in love with him over time, but you know what? It's possible I will just get a little all over the place and start gushing because I love him. So we're going to start in with book 1 and some interesting stuff about him in book 1. Now, if you've watched my previous HP Chats videos, you know that for the most part I ignore anything that has been added post book 7. It just doesn't exist in my brain. Pottermore didn't happen unless it is to do with information about Neville Longbottom. So there was a thing on Pottermore about hat stalls, and that is basically when the Sorting Hat takes a really long time to decide on a character's house. And I don't remember the exact specifics, but I think that 2 of the longest hat stalls, or ones that went over 5 minutes or something, were Neville and Hermione. And with Neville, the situation was that Neville kept asking to be put in Hufflepuff while the Sorting Hat insistently said that he belonged in Gryffindor, which, if you think about it, is the most Gryffindor thing to do for Neville, first-year Neville, to sit up on a stool and be like, I'm not Gryffindor, I'm Hufflepuff, and for the Hat to be like, no, you're Gryffindor, you're pure Gryffindor, and he's like, no, I'm not brave, shut up, put me in Hufflepuff, no. You belong in Gryffindor. No! That's so Gryffindor. When you consider the fact that 11-year-old Neville Longbottom is not argumentative, he doesn't really say a lot, he doesn't make a lot of stands, I think it's kind of relevant that one of those stands was that he spent 5 full minutes, one of the longest lengths of time in the history of the Sorting Hat, arguing about where he belonged. And then, you know what, the Sorting Hat was right, so I'm sure the Hat was like, ha 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 ha! And if we were talking about other things in the first book that just made me fall in love with Neville, Book 1 made me adore him. It is when he stands up to the trio at the end of Sorcerer's Stone. So he stands up to them, he tells them that if they leave the common room, Gryffindor is going to lose a bunch of points, and he can't stand for that. And because of it, later on, he gets 10 points awarded to Gryffindor, which in the end means that Gryffindor wins the House Cup for that year. But what I wanted to do was read a direct quote that Dumbledore has at the end when he's explaining why Neville won those points, because it's one of my favorite quotes. So his quote is, "There are all kinds of courage. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends." But what I love about that quote is the fact that it recognizes that there are different types of bravery, because I think Gryffindor gets really stereotyped as far as what bravery means. It means making brash decisions and rushing in willy-nilly, and I think that that is such an important moment because it recognizes that Neville's bravery, his standing up to his friends to say that this isn't right, is just as brave in Neville's perspective as it is for the trio to go and take on a 3-headed dog and whatever other trials. Neville's bravery, albeit different, is just as important and just as brave as that bravery, and I love that. Another reason Neville is wonderful is because he is an example of a character that just 100% flourishes when the right attention is directed his way. Sometimes I think about where would Neville be as an 11-year-old version of himself had his grandmother really fostered within him the fact that he could go into any sort of magic and she would love and support him. If she had supported his love of herbology or charms, where would 11-year-old Neville be if he'd had the loving attention and support of Neville and McGonagall telling him that his choices were right and that his pace was acceptable and okay? When Neville is given that positive attention and when he's encouraged, he becomes incredible, and it breaks my heart to see how well he does when he's given that positive attention, because it makes me wonder what kind of 11-year-old he would have been had he had that attention his whole life. I just love him for how much he grows when people care about him. and his success. So one thing that's fantastic about Neville, in my opinion, is the fact that he very well could have been the chosen one, which for some reason people say is a fan theory, but it's like right there in the book. Dumbledore says that he could have been the chosen one, so I don't understand why we write that off as a fan theory. It was a very possible ending. But the main point is that Neville could have been the chosen one, and for whatever reason, Voldy decided that the actual chosen one must be Harry Potter. That's for a variety of reasons I could discuss in a video. I personally think that it has to do with blood status. Anyway, that's a discussion for another video, but Voldy decided that it was Harry who he had to go after, and Neville could very well have been that person, which is the reason for the fandom call Neville could have done it in 4, the belief amongst the fandom that had Neville been the chosen one, he would have wrapped that thing up by Goblet of Fire. But the main reason I mention this is because Neville was in fact passed over to be the chosen one, and then in the end, he is still the reason that they get Voldemort. Without him, they wouldn't have done it. He is still the reason that they killed him. That's just incredible to me in terms of writing and that character and seeing how he's grown, that even though he was passed over for that, he still became that chosen person in a lot of ways. But my love for that scene is also connected to the fact that there is this one is a fan theory, that J.K. Rowling loves parallels, and so there are a lot of parallels where the trio modern Hogwarts is a mirror for the Marauders and who each of those people represents. I will leave an article that I read that describes it perfectly down in the description below if you want to go and read it, but basically what it comes down to is that in a lot of fan theories, the parallel for Peter Pettigrew is Neville Longbottom, and I adore that, because Neville is Peter Pettigrew had things gone differently and had things changed. I think that this not only explains why Peter Pettigrew was a Gryffindor, which I think a lot of people are like, well, why was he a Gryffindor? Own up to your evil Gryffindors, people. But it explains how people who have been pushed to the side, who have been put in lonely situations, can change the history of how things go, whether that is for good or bad, because Peter Pettigrew and Neville Longbottom both completely changed the course of history, even though growing up and going to Hogwarts, they had a lot of the same experiences. Anyway, I will leave that link down in the description below if you want to go read that blog post, but I think that that is a great way to think about Neville Longbottom's character and who he becomes. It just makes my heart, I can't. Especially because in that scene, when everyone thinks Harry is dead, Voldemort extends a hand and says, come over to my side and you will be spared. It's the same extension that Peter Pettigrew gets. And instead of Neville accepting, he goes, no, I have learned to be who I am embracing who I am. And then he pulls a sword out of a head and just kills the... I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Neville has so much sadness inside, and it is something that we don't get to see a lot of because he is a side character, but also because he really internalizes a lot of that sadness. He lives in the shadows of parents that were tortured to the point of insanity. And then for so long at Hogwarts, he is a relative loner in a lot of ways, so he has to deal with all of that pressure completely on his own. Especially in the early years, he does not have the fast friends that Harry does, who can support him and help him to know how valued he is. Not only that, but Neville still has a loved one in his life who heaps on these intense feelings of inadequacy on Neville that I'm sure he provides well enough on his own. But because of that, because of his sadness, and because of the way that he carries his parents' legacy on his shoulders, he throws himself into everything that he does with so much passion and verve. The more attention he gets, the more people tell him that he can be strong, he can be like his parents, the more that he becomes them. He becomes the strength and the heart, and he just throws himself into things with passion and with attention. And when he goes into the DA, everything is about becoming what he knows he can become. And he applies himself so hard. He believes in himself more than anyone else and tries harder than anyone else because he knows that he has to, but he also knows that if he keeps working, it's going to happen for him. Also, a little side note that I want to make in terms of comparing Harry and Neville. Harry and Neville have both lost their parents, but in drastically different ways. Harry's parents are completely gone, and so he has to carry on their legacy, not ever really knowing them, but he still gets a lot of chances to see them or to communicate with them in certain ways. Neville's parents are still present in his life. They are people that he sees, and they don't know him at all. And that is the most heartbreaking thing that I can imagine. Lily and James are gone. There is no hope for bringing them back. But Frank and Alice are right there, and Neville has the same problem. And that is a problem he doesn't share with anyone, which only just makes it worse. He breaks my heart. He just breaks my heart. So one of the things that I adore about him is that Neville is brave in the quietest of ways. Like I said, he exemplifies the fact that there is more than one type of bravery. He stands up to his friends and he keeps fighting and keeps trying when he gets knocked down, and that is bravery too, even if it is a really quiet, contained bravery. And Neville's bravery, what it exemplifies, is not rash decisions and rushing into things. It is still having that passion and loyalty, but choosing the battles that mean the most and then going after them with all he has. And the other thing that's great about this quiet bravery is that over the course of 7 books, we get to see him go from that really quiet bravery to book 7, where he is loudly and enthusiastically brave. In Deathly Hallows, Neville has found his battle. He obviously has had other moments, like in Order of the Phoenix, and he has the moments to fight, but book 7 is Neville's battlefield, and he is on the front of the line. And Neville's bravery, his battle that he's chosen, and I feel like I'm gonna get a little bit emotional when I say this, but the battle that Neville has chosen is hope. He is fighting for the hope that the trio is still out there and that he is going to be there when they get back. He is fighting for the hope that tyranny isn't going to conquer and that love is going to be what ends up taking it all. And in book 7, he becomes Hogwarts' strength, but he also becomes Hogwarts' heart, and that is beautiful to me. The final specific thing that I want to talk about is the fact that Neville has come from a place of being emotionally abused and how he grows from that experience. He goes from being ignored and abused to being the most vibrant defense for the students who need him. In Prisoner of Azkaban, in Neville's 3rd year, we discover that his deepest fear is a professor that is supposed to be keeping him safe, which I just can't even get into, because that's a whole other video that I don't know if I'll ever be ready to do. But the place that is supposed to make Neville feel safe is something that has become a deepest fear for him. And what he turns that into is recognizing that no professor is ever going to make a student he can protect feel that way. Book 7 Hogwarts was hell. It was completely hellish. And Neville was the person at the front of the line who said, "You can touch these first years over my dead body. You will make them fear this place through me first." And what a testament to how he has grown in confidence within himself and how he has grown from his negative experiences to being a fierce defender of those who need defending. He is completely secure in the fact that no first year is ever going to feel as terrified and as victimized as he did. He comes from abuse and he comes out strong and fierce, and I love him. And let's be honest, he would be like the world's best professor. He would bring in all of the bits of professors who actually cared about him over the years. He would combine all of them and he would make kids feel so hopeful and respected and able to learn. And I have a lot of emotions over Neville being a professor because he would just be brilliant at it. So in general, the reasons that Neville is my favorite character, I guess you can boil it down to the fact that I think he has the strongest character development. I know that so many characters go through so much, but Neville is in the background and he is fighting just as hard, and his character development going from book 1 to book 7 is just indescribably beautiful. I love how much he loves the people around him, how passionate he is about defending those he cares about and the things that he values. I love the person he becomes even with the weight of his parents being carried on his shoulders and the expectations of his grandmother carried in from day 1 of this school. And I just want to give him a hug. I want to give him 100 hugs. I wish he was here because I love him. Okay, I think that that's about as organized as we're going to get in terms of the things specifically that I love about Neville Longbottom and the character that he is. So, Do you have feelings about Neville Longbottom? Clearly I have feelings about Neville Longbottom. But if you do, please leave them in the comments below. Let me know how you feel about these things. If you go and read up on Neville being a chosen one or Neville as a parallel for Peter Pettigrew, I would love to hear your opinions on that. If you have any headcanons about him, AUs that have been written, anything on Tumblr that's about, you can link that below. Believe me, I will go and I will dig through it. Also, what is your favorite Harry Potter character? I would be curious to know. So I think that is everything. Thank you so much for watching this gush fest where I talked about Neville, my fave. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!